Welcome back, my friends. Today, I want to tell you a story about a boy who had almost nothing. No money. No safe home. Sometimes, not even enough food to eat. This boy grew up in the poor streets of London. Life was hard, and many days were full of sadness. But this boy did something amazing. One day, he made the whole world laugh. His name was Charlie Chaplin. You may know his funny walk, his small hat, and his little mustache. But behind the laughter was a life full of struggle and courage. How did a poor boy become one of the most famous stars in history? Stay with me, and you will discover his incredible story. And if you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to hear more. Charlie Chaplin was born on April 16, 1889, in London, England. His parents were music hall performers. They sang and acted on stage to entertain people. At first, it seemed that Charlie would grow up close to the world of theater. But his childhood quickly became very difficult. His father, Charles Chaplin Sr., had a serious problem with alcohol. He drank too much and slowly left the family. Soon, Charlie and his mother were alone. Life became harder every day. They lived in poor neighborhoods in London. Money was always short. Some nights, Charlie went to bed hungry because there was no food in the house. Things became even worse when the family had to enter a workhouse. A workhouse was a place where very poor people lived. Life there was cold, strict, and often cruel. Children had to work long hours and follow many hard rules. For a small boy, it was a frightening place. Charlie saw poverty, loneliness, and struggle very early in life. Yet these painful experiences quietly shaped the boy who would one day make millions of people laugh around the world. When Charlie was about 5 years old, something unexpected happened. One evening, his mother, Hannah, was performing on stage in a small music hall. She was singing for the audience, as she often did to earn a little money for the family. But during the performance, her voice suddenly broke. She could not continue singing. The audience began to laugh and shout. The show was in trouble. Then someone had an idea. Little Charlie was waiting behind the stage. The manager asked the boy to go out and sing instead of his mother. Charlie was only 5 years old, but he bravely walked onto the stage. At first, the audience was surprised to see such a small child. But Charlie began to sing and move in a funny way. People started to laugh. Soon, the whole room was smiling and clapping. For the first time in his life, Charlie felt something special. He felt the magic of the stage. He saw that laughter could change the mood of a room. It could turn anger into joy. But outside the theater, life was still very hard. Charlie's mother tried her best to take care of him and his older brother, Sidney. However, years of poverty and stress slowly damaged her health. She became very weak and sad. Over time, her mind also became unstable. One day, she had to be taken to a mental hospital. For Charlie and Sidney, this was a terrible moment. They suddenly had no one to protect them. The two boys were often alone in the streets of London. Sometimes they slept in poor shelters. Sometimes they searched for food in garbage bins. Life on the streets was cold and frightening. Many days, they did not know where their next meal would come from. Yet the brothers tried to stay strong and take care of each other. Even during these dark times, Charlie never forgot the feeling he had on the stage that night. Deep inside his heart, a small dream was growing. As Charlie became older, he started looking for small jobs in theater groups. He joined street performers and learned to dance and act. Later, he became part of a group called the 8 Lancashire Lads, a group of young dancers who performed on stage. This was an important step in his life. For the first time, Charlie felt he was moving closer to his dream. He practiced hard and learned quickly. His talent and energy began to attract attention. People noticed the young performer with the expressive face and natural sense of humor. Then, in 1910, an amazing opportunity arrived. Charlie was invited to join the famous comedy company of Fred Carnot. This group traveled and performed comedy shows for large audiences. Soon, the company planned a tour to the United States. For Charlie, this was the chance of a lifetime. When he stepped onto the ship that would take him to America, he could not know what the future would bring. But deep in his heart, he felt something important. Perhaps this new country would change his life. Perhaps this was the place where the poor boy from London would finally become a star. When Charlie Chaplin began working at Keystone Studios in 1914, he was still a young actor trying to find his place in the film world. Silent movies were very popular at that time, and many actors performed simple jokes and physical comedy. Charlie was funny, but he wanted to create something special. One day, while preparing for a scene, he decided to build a new character. He walked into the costume room and began choosing different pieces of clothing. But instead of picking clothes that matched, he chose items that looked strange together. He put on a pair of very baggy pants. Then he chose a tight jacket that looked too small for him. He found a pair of large shoes that were almost too big to walk in. On his head, he placed a small round hat. Finally, he added a thin mustache and a small walking cane. When Charlie looked in the mirror, a new character appeared. This character looked poor but proud. He walked in a funny way, with small steps and a swinging cane. Even though his clothes were old and strange, he tried to behave like a gentleman. This character became known as the Tramp. The Tramp was not just a clown. He was a symbol of many ordinary people. He was poor and often unlucky. The world around him was sometimes cruel. Yet he never lost his dignity. The Tramp might fall down, get into trouble, or be chased by the police. But he always stood up again. He continued walking with hope in his heart. Audiences loved this character. People around the world could understand him, even without words. Because silent films used very little dialogue, emotions had to be shown through movement and expression. Charlie's face, gestures, and timing were perfect for this kind of storytelling. Soon, the Tramp became famous everywhere. In country after country, people laughed at his funny walk and his small mustache. But they also felt something deeper. they saw a reflection of their own struggles in this little man who never gave up. Charlie Chaplin was no longer just another actor. He had created one of the most famous characters in film history. As his popularity grew, Charlie also began to think about something else: freedom. At that time, many film studios controlled almost everything. Actors had to follow strict rules. The studios decided what movies to make, how actors should perform, and how much money they would receive. Charlie did not like this system. He wanted the freedom to tell stories in his own way. He wanted to create films with deeper meaning, not just simple jokes. In 1919, he made a bold decision. Together with 3 other famous stars, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and director D.W. Griffith, Charlie helped create a new company called United Artists. This was a revolutionary idea. Instead of being controlled by studios, the artists themselves would control their work. United Artists allowed filmmakers to produce and distribute their own movies. For Charlie, this meant true creative freedom. He could now write his own stories. He could direct his films, act in them, and shape every scene exactly as he imagined. Later, he even composed music for many of his movies. This freedom allowed him to create films that were not only funny but also thoughtful and emotional. Charlie Chaplin was no longer just a comedian. He had become a true artist of cinema. As the years passed, the film industry began to change. In the late 1920s, a new technology appeared in Hollywood: movies with sound. These films were called talkies. Actors could now speak on screen, and audiences could hear their voices. Many studios quickly moved to this new style of filmmaking. They believed silent movies would soon disappear. But Charlie Chaplin did not agree. Charlie believed that true emotion did not always need words. He felt that a simple look, a small movement, or a quiet moment could tell a deeper story than long speeches. Because of this belief, he continued making silent films, even when many people thought the style was old-fashioned. One of his most famous films was The Kid, released in 1921. In this movie, Charlie played the familiar character of the Tramp. The story showed his character caring for a poor little boy who had no family. The film was both funny and deeply emotional. Audiences laughed at the playful scenes between the Tramp and the child. But many people also cried during the sad moments. The film showed love, poverty, and the struggle of life in a very human way. Years later, Charlie created another masterpiece, City Lights, in 1931. In this story, the Tramp meets a blind flower girl. She believes he is a rich man because of a misunderstanding. The Tramp secretly works very hard to earn money to help her. He wants to pay for an operation that will allow her to see again. The film was full of gentle humor, but its ending became one of the most touching scenes in film history. When the girl finally sees the Tramp and realizes who helped her, their silent moment says more than many pages of dialogue. Then, in 1936, Charlie released another powerful film called Modern Times. This movie showed the difficult life of factory workers during the Industrial Age. In one famous scene, the Tramp works on a fast-moving machine and struggles to keep up with the endless bolts and gears. the machine almost seems to control him. Through humor, Charlie showed something serious. He criticized a world where workers were treated like parts of a machine. The film questioned the strange and sometimes unfair rules of modern society. By this time, Charlie Chaplin was more than just a comedian. He had become a storyteller who used laughter to speak about real problems. Soon, however, the world faced an even greater danger. In Europe, a new and frightening political movement was growing. A dictator named Adolf Hitler was gaining power in Germany. His government promoted hatred, control, and violence. Charlie watched these events with deep concern. Many people also noticed something unusual. Charlie Chaplin and Adolf Hitler had similar mustaches. This strange similarity gave Charlie an idea. In 1940, he released his first full talking film, The Great Dictator. In this movie, Charlie played two roles: a cruel dictator who looked like Hitler, and a kind Jewish barber who looked almost the same. Through comedy and satire, the film mocked the dictator and his dangerous ideas. But the most powerful moment came at the end. Instead of a joke, Charlie delivered a serious speech directly to the audience. In this speech, he spoke about freedom, kindness, and the importance of helping each other. He warned people about the dangers of hatred and blind power. Millions of viewers around the world were deeply moved. With this film, Charlie Chaplin showed that he was not only a master of comedy. He was also a brave voice for humanity and human rights. As the world moved into the years after World War II, the political situation became tense again. A new conflict was growing between powerful countries. This period was called the Cold War. In the United States, many people became afraid of communism. The government began to investigate artists, writers, and actors who were suspected of having unusual political ideas. Some people believed that Charlie Chaplin's films and public statements were too critical of society. Soon, Charlie became the subject of serious investigations. The FBI closely watched his life and his opinions. Newspapers wrote many negative stories about him. Some politicians claimed that he was dangerous or un-American. Charlie felt confused and deeply hurt. For many years, he had worked in America and created films that made millions of people laugh. Then, in 1952, something dramatic happened. Charlie traveled to Europe to promote one of his films. While he was away, the United States government made a decision. They announced that Charlie Chaplin would not be allowed to return unless he agreed to a long political investigation. Charlie was shocked by this news. After thinking carefully, he decided not to go back. Instead, he chose to leave the United States and start a new life somewhere else. Charlie moved to the peaceful town of Vevey in Switzerland. This quiet place near a beautiful lake became his new home. There, he lived with his fourth wife, Una O'Neill, the daughter of the famous writer Eugene O'Neill. Una was many years younger than Charlie, but their relationship was strong and loving. Together they raised a large family with 8 children. For the first time in many years, Charlie enjoyed a calmer life. He spent time with his family, walked in the quiet countryside, and worked on smaller creative projects. the noise of Hollywood was far away. Even though he was no longer living in America, people around the world still respected his work. His films continued to inspire new generations. Years passed, and slowly the public opinion in the United States began to change. Many people realized that Charlie Chaplin had been treated unfairly. They remembered how much joy his films had brought to the world. Then, in 1972, something remarkable happened. The American film industry invited Charlie Chaplin back to the United States. He was asked to receive a special honorary Academy Award for his incredible contribution to cinema. After 20 years of living in exile, Charlie finally returned. When he walked onto the stage at the Academy Awards ceremony, something unforgettable happened. The audience stood up and began to clap. The applause continued for a very long time. It lasted for about 12 minutes, one of the longest standing ovations in Oscar history. Charlie stood quietly, deeply moved by the moment. After many difficult years, this was a sign of respect and reconciliation. His life had been full of struggle, loss, and misunderstanding. Yet he had never stopped creating beauty through laughter. The story of Charlie Chaplin teaches us an important lesson. He was born into poverty. He faced hunger, loneliness, and rejection. At times, even governments turned against him. But he never gave up on his dream. Through courage, creativity, and determination, he transformed his pain into art. His films continue to bring joy to people even today. Charlie Chaplin once said a simple but powerful sentence: "A day without laughter is a day wasted." And perhaps that is the greatest gift he left to the world.